Hotel. This is WaveTalkers Live, episode number 77. Today, we are talking about ham radio, business travel with ham radio. And I'm joined by my esteemed colleagues today, David W0DHG and Dan NR6V. So without further ado, let's go ahead and jump right into this. So I'm going to bring that over and advance over to the next slide. And we'll start off with our regular check-in. So if you have access to WinLink, send in a WinLink check-in. Send it to all three of our call signs, W0DHG, NR6V, W6AH, and our tactical address, WaveTalkers. The question for today is, what ham radio gear do you take when you travel? And we're going to step through the process of checking in because there is a brand new WinLink check-in form. So let me jump over to my WinLink station here, and we're going to walk through that together. So once you have your copy of WinLink up and running, you want to make sure, if you haven't done this, you want to make sure you quit WinLink, launch it again. So if there are any updates, you go ahead and run those, and you want to make sure you update WinLink and you update your forms, because a little over a week ago, a brand new form was added. So what you're going to do is you're going to come up here and you're going to click on the new message button. You're going to come up here to the select template option. Go ahead and give that a click. Then down here in the template manager, when that opens up for you, you want to click the plus sign next to standard templates, and you're going to come down here to the general forms section. Give that a click. Down near the bottom, you're going to find the WinLink check-in.txt. Go ahead and give that a double click. And if the demo gods are with you, it should open up to the brand new WinLink check-in form. And as always, now, if you've previously saved your form data and you're used to loading the form data, you want to fill this out and you want to save new form data with this form, because the old form data is not going to map into here properly. As always, you always want to start off by clicking that date and time block right there. Once you do, it's going to set the form's current date and time to your computer's current date and time. You can go ahead and click OK, and that will go in there. Here's the to field. This is where you're going to enter in all of our call signs. Just separate those with a semicolon: W0DHG, NR6V, W6AH, and our tactical address, WaveTalkers. Just go ahead and fill all of those in there. In the from, go ahead and put in your call sign. Station contact names, we're going to enter in your handle, your first name. Initial operators, this is the place for you to fill in the call signs of any additional operators that you have sitting there watching with you. In the session section, this has all been changed now. For the type, go ahead and select exercise, because this is going to be an exercise. For the service, let us know what service you're sending your traffic in on, whether or not you're sending it via amateur radio or you're sending it in via shares. For the band, if you are going to send this in via the internet, go ahead and click the button that says Telnet. And then if you're going to send it via HF or VHF or any of these other modes, just go ahead and select those there. Down here under session type, tell us which mode you're actually going to be sending your traffic in via. I'm going to have mine set to Telnet, but if you're going to send it in, say, via Pactor or VARA FM or something like that, go ahead and select those options, whatever is most appropriate for you. Down here for location, you're going to go ahead and fill in your location information. Your latitude and longitude should be filled in automatically for you, either by your connected GPS, or if you just have the center of your grid square entered in there, it will go ahead and plug that information in for you. It should also tell you off to the right what your current grid square is, so you can see that. Now, your grid square is entered in on the settings page for WinLink, and we'll actually touch on that later on in today's show. Down here on the bottom, this is where the comments section is. This is where you want to enter in and let us know what ham radio gear that you take with you when you travel. Just go ahead and fill in a short answer there, and then you're going to click the submit button. Once you do that, it'll give you a couple little pull down menus here that you can go ahead and click OK through those. And once you get to a blank browser, you can go ahead and close your browser window. All those data should then be filled out into the message here. You can then post that to your outbox by clicking that button, and then come over here to the open session, choose the session type that you're going to be sending your message with, hit the open session button, and start to send your traffic. And if the demo gods are with us, it looks like, there we go. We've got some traffic coming in from around the world. Later in the show, we'll check back here and we will map in all of the check-ins to see where everyone is coming in from. One thing to note, though, we will be checking the check-ins using the new form. So if you have not updated to the latest version of WinLink and you don't have the latest forms, you send us one of the old check-in forms, you're not going to show up on the map. So make sure you have your WinLink updated and you have that new copy of the form. All right, with that, let's go ahead and jump back over to today's topic. And we're talking about business travel with ham radio. And I should mention that we're really talking about not just any business travel, but really any personal travel. But really what we're looking at is we're looking at some travel you're going to be doing where you're going to be pretty much flying on a commercial airline. You're going to be staying in some kind of a hotel or at a resort or something. Probably the grounds around there are going to be pretty limited for you to be able to set up and operate at. If there is a nearby park, you're probably going to have to walk to that location. So we're really talking about a portable operation where you're really away from home for a long distance, but you're going to need to travel to get there. So when you start thinking about what you're going to bring with you, we need to think about what is the essential gear that you want to have with you. And when you're traveling via airline, especially if you're traveling for business or for pleasure, you're not necessarily going there just to operate ham radio. So the gear that you bring with you is going to be a smaller subset of the normal gear that you would typically take to, say, operate out in the field, maybe go to a POTA, or even your emergency deployment kit that you would have with you. So things you're going to want to make sure you have your transceiver, whichever one that's going to be, some sort of an antenna system. You're going to need a power source that you're going to be able to power your radio with, and you're going to need a bag or some kind of way to be able to carry all of that gear. The other thing that is really kind of the essential thing that you want to make sure that you have with you when you're traveling, because you're going to be outside of your normal operating practice, is make sure you have a copy of your FCC license. Just go ahead and print that out, stick it in your kit if you don't have it in there already. So if there are any questions that somebody has, you can pull out your license. You can say, hey, no, I really am a licensed amateur radio operator. And you can start having whatever discussion you're going to need to have when that takes place. So we're gonna dive into each of these core elements of these four core elements, and we're gonna start off by talking about the power system that you're going to bring with you. And since you're going to be flying, that means you're going to be under the Federal Aviation Administration, or the FAA's restrictions, and they have some very specific restrictions on lithium batteries. Now, most all of our ham radio gear operates on lithium batteries. And there are some other different types of batteries that people bring with them and operate. But for the most part, when you are traveling, you're more than likely going to be using some lithium batteries. And I've got a link to the website, faa.gov/hazmat/packsafe/lithium-batteries. And that's got a lot of detailed information in there. But when you kind of dive into that long page of information, you'll find that there's some core things that you need to take into account. First and foremost, lithium batteries, you are only allowed to bring those on a commercial airline inside of your carry-on luggage. You are not allowed to check those batteries at all. And there are multiple stages. I just got back from a flight. I had to fly to the East Coast this past week for work. And at every single stage along the way of getting on the flight, we were asked, do you have any lithium batteries? Are they in your check luggage or are they in your carry-on? It was something that was very heavily focused on throughout the entire both check-in, bag check, security check, and so forth. So make sure you're bringing your all of your batteries that are related to your ham radio gear. Make sure they're packed in your carry-on. Now that would include, let's say you've got like I was traveling with my EmComm 705 that you see back up there, and that has a built-in battery that's attached onto the back. So that it just is another reminder. You want to make sure you even bring your radio inside of your carry-on luggage with you, especially if it's got that internal battery. Now, Another one of the key restrictions is the size of the battery that you're allowed to travel with. Now, if you're traveling in the continental US, you are limited for commercial airlines to 160 watt hours, or if you do the math, it's roughly about 13 and a half amp hours. Now, most of the battery manufacturers, if you're buying a commercial battery, they usually don't sell a 13 or a 13 and a half amp hour. They usually sell a 12 amp hour, and then smaller than that or larger than that quite a bit. So you want to make sure that you're hitting within that restricted area of batteries. So something less than 13 and a half amp hours, more than likely is going to be a 12 amp hour or less that you're going to be able to bring onto the plane with you. Now, if you're doing international travel, the restriction is different. It's 100 watt hours or 8 amp hours of power that you're allowed to bring on a international flight with you. In the US, as long as you're below that 100 watt hours or 8 amp hours, then you can bring multiples of the batteries that with you that you would like. But if you fall into that category of 101 watt hours up to that 160 watt hours, then you are restricted to only bringing 2 of those batteries with you at a maximum. So for instance, on this trip, I did have my 12 amp hour Bioenno battery with me. And then I also travel with a portable battery for being able to jumpstart my vehicle and so forth. I can also run additional items off of the USB-C power. That both of those batteries combined, each of them was in that 101 to 160 watt hour range. And so I was restricted to just having those 2 batteries with me. And if you're when you start talking about how you're going to bring these in, you also need to think about your carry-on luggage that you have. It used to be the day when we were flying, we could carry on a couple of extra items, and the airlines would kind of not kind of look away a little bit. But now they're really strict on making sure you get 1 carry-on item and you get 1 personal item. I found a website. If you go to faa.gov/traveler/prepare_fly/baggage, you'll find out that the FAA has a specific restriction on carry-on size, and that's 45 linear inches. You calculate that by just measuring the length, width, and height of your bag, multiply all of those numbers together, and they need to show up. They need to come together to 45 or less in order for your carry-on to come on. I just wish it was that simple, because it's not. Because it turns out that each of the different airlines have their own restrictions on top of that. So here's another site that I found that can help you kind of navigate this a little bit. tsatraveltips.us/carry-on luggage size. And it turns out that 45 linear inches, that is the restriction that airlines such as United, American, Delta, Hawaiian Airlines, and Allegiant, all of those follow that strict 45-inch guideline by the FAA. Now, Hawaiian Airlines, if you are flying out to Hawaii to go on a business trip, awesome, good deal. The Hawaiian Airlines has an additional carry-on restriction, and they limit your bag to 25 pounds or less. So definitely something to keep in mind when you're traveling with your ham radio gear, because your bag can get pretty heavy pretty quickly. The next set of restrictions comes from airlines such as Southwest, JetBlue, Spirit, Virgin, Frontier. Those all have a carry-on restriction of 50 linear inches. So you get a little bit larger bag you're able to carry with you on those airlines. So something to keep in mind. And if you're flying Alaska, Horizon, or Sun Country, those actually restrict the size to 51 linear inches when you multiply your length, width, and height all together. So if you're confused at all, go ahead and stay with the 45 linear inches, but just know that on some of these other airlines, you are able to carry just a little bit larger bag than what you would like. If you're traveling internationally, then you're going to really need to follow up with your specific carrier to find out what their restrictions are. This tsatraveltips.us site does have international travel, and they've got a lot of airline carriers listed on there for you. So you're able to go on and find a lot more information on there as well. In general, though, when you're thinking about traveling with your amateur radio gear, you really want to think about your station should be both compact and efficient. And you want to make it as small as you can in order to not take over your luggage, take over the rest of the trip. This is going to be a side thing that you're more than likely going to be doing, as opposed to the primary thing. So if you're going on a de-expedition, you're probably going to be bringing a ton of gear. If you're going on vacation and your primary thing you're planning on doing while you're there on vacation is going to be operating ham radio, or that's going to be a big part of your trip, then you'll probably bring some additional gear with you. But if you're traveling for business, or you're going on a personal trip, but you're going to pull a little bit of time out of there and you're going to be doing some operating, then try and make sure that your station is set up as compact and efficient as possible. And that really means on the VHF UHF side, you're probably going to be bringing your HT with you for VHF UHF connections. Or if you're going to operate on HF, more than likely you're going to be bringing a QRP radio, possibly a mobile station. But the problem with bringing a mobile station or a station that's going to bring out 100 watts, or as they call them, QRO radios, is that they use so much power. And when we were just talking about those power restrictions that you have, it ends up not making a whole lot of sense to really go for that 100 watts of power, staying at the lower power of QRP, or just low power. So not necessarily just the strict 5-watt QRP, but 10, 15 watts, or even 20 watts or so. There are a lot of radios that'll meet that. These are nice and small and compact stations that are much easier to be able to travel with. So let's talk a little bit about VHF and UHF. So when you're going to be operating while you're traveling, you're more than likely going to be trying to connect to some repeaters in the area where you're going to be operating on. A great site to be able to check out there is repeaterbook.com. Just check it out beforehand, download and program those repeaters into your HT. You're going to be operating probably simplex and possibly digital. So the things you're going to want to bring with you, obviously your transceiver, the little HT. In my case, I actually brought my EmComm 705 because it had everything. It had VHF, UHF, HF, all in one set. But you can certainly bring your HT. You'll probably want to bring a nice set of headphones to plug into your HT when you're at a resort or you're out in a very busy area. Having the speaker going on your radio can be quite disturbing. And one of the things you're trying to do is not draw a lot of attention to yourself. So you can kind of quietly sit there and operate and have a good time. Adding some headphones to your station is a really good way to do that. And when you're traveling for business, you probably already have a laptop with you. Or if you're like me, then you've gone ahead and picked up something like a Microsoft Surface Go 3 or one of the small tablets that you can operate digital from. So it's nice and small, compact. You're able to get on and do your operating with that. You're more than likely going to need some kind of an audio interface, whether it be a signal link or a digirig, or maybe it's just a USB cable that you have. You want to make sure that you have whatever equipment that you need if you're planning on operating digital. And digital can be things like FT8, that can be a variety of other digital modes, including WinLink. So you want to make sure that you've got all the gear with you that you need. Now, if you're going to bring one piece of gear that's kind of like that extra thing that's going to really help you enhance your station in one way or another, a really good idea to bring is a little small portable mag mount antenna. You can get these pretty cheaply. I know both Comet sells them and Diamond sells them. I have a small one from Diamond that I travel with. It's just kind of like a small little hockey puck and a little short antenna, and that will both fit inside of your carry-on. It usually comes with the coax cable already attached. And this is great if you've got a rental car. You can just go ahead and pop that thing up on the top of your rental car to be able to operate while you're going. Or if you're in your hotel room, You can even use the mag mount antenna. At the resort that I was staying at, to the hotel that I was staying at, there was a lamp in the room and had a large base on the bottom of the lamp. And I was able to just take the mag mount and stick it right to the base of the lamp, and then move the lamp right in front of the window. And then I was able to do some operating. You can also, if you're heading out somewhere, to be able to do some operating out portable. You can oftentimes, if you're in a resort, you'll find they may have little small tables or something. A lot of times those will be metal, and the mag mount will stick right to those as well. And that'll just help you increase your range and make it a little bit easier for you to be able to operate with. Here I was set up in my hotel room with my EmComm 705. One of the nice things about being able to operate in other locations, especially when you've got a little bit of downtime, say in the evenings or so forth, you can try out a few other things, see what other things are open and on the air for you. Here I was listening to some of the air bands, and I was listening to some of the air traffic that was in the Orlando area. I was able to pick up several of the airports in the area and pick up quite a bit of traffic that was going on. I was also able to get onto some of the local repeaters, listen to both some commercial AM and FM radio, all of that just through that simple little mag mount antenna that I had set up there in the room. And this allowed me to sit over at the desk, wherever that was, put the mag mount right over in the windowsill. And I even found that if I took the mag mount and I put it up in the window, even off of the little lamp base, I ended up getting a little bit better connectivity, because it really put the mag mount right, put the antenna right in the window for me to operate. Now, if you are lucky enough to have a balcony set up where you're staying, many hotels these days don't have that, especially if you're in an urban environment. But if you do have a balcony, then being able to get out on the balcony is pretty nice to be able to get out there and do some operating from there as well. So let's talk a little bit about HF while you are traveling. Now, HF, more than likely going to be operating on voice, possibly CW, or one of the digital modes that you're going to be operating with. So gear-wise, you're looking at some kind of transceiver, again, probably a QRP radio, just because it's a little bit smaller, it's a little bit more compact. Many of these have built-in batteries in them, or have a battery internal to them. You're going to want to bring some headphones, again, same reason. If you're out operating somewhere, you want to make sure that you're kind of being a little bit discreet when you're set up and operating, especially if you're on a resort or on the grounds of a hotel. Perhaps there's a nearby local park you can get to, make it a little bit easier for you. But for the most part, you want to be able to set up and kind of keep a little bit of a low profile. So headphones really help with that. We already talked about the battery options there. Some kind of an HF antenna. We're going to talk more about HF antennas here in just a minute. You're also, of course, going to want, if you're going to be doing some digital modes, your computer, maybe a tablet or something that you're going to be operating with, and any of the interfaces and all of the cabling that you're going to need to get your radio to operate effectively. So let's talk about the antennas that you may want to have with you. So when we start thinking of antennas, anytime you're operating ham radio, you're always dealing with some sort of a compromise for your antenna. And when you're traveling for business or for pleasure, when you're trying to set up and operate ham radio in that kind of a scenario, you're really looking at 4 key categories that you're having to deal with. And you're having to deal with things like the time. How much time do you have to set aside to be able to set up and operate? How long is it going to take you to get that antenna and that station set up before you have to tear it down and then go on to the next event? Typically, what I found when I'm traveling for business, I usually only have a couple of hours here or there, and so being able to do a larger setup is just simply not possible. The next real critical consideration is space. How much space do you have to be able to set up, and how much space is that antenna going to take? We're going to look at a couple of different types of antennas, but at many resorts, a lot of times, unless it's a place that you're going to on a fairly regular basis, you're not really familiar with the grounds. You're not familiar with the setup that's there. And so you're going to have to be figuring out how to operate in this small of a footprint as possible. The next is safety, and this is a real concern, especially when you're out at a location where you're unfamiliar with. And lots of the public is going to be there as well. Having long wires set up, having long counterpoise wires set up, having gear that's with guy wires and all of that. Yeah, it's impressive to be able to see, but you could have children running around. You could have other people just wandering around, not really paying attention to what's going on. So a lot of those can be a real safety hazard. So you want to kind of minimize that as much as possible. You also want to be mindful of how much attention that you are drawing to yourself. If you're going to set out and you're going to operate, you're not putting on a show for folks. So setting up that big X beam is probably not the thing to do when you're in that kind of a situation. You want to kind of be a little bit low key when you're setting up to be able to do your operating. So let's talk about a couple of those antenna options. So first of all is a traditional dipole antenna. Now, when I think of traveling with some kind of a dipole, usually if I'm going to travel with a dipole, I'm probably going to bring, say, the buddy pole system, which is nice. It's great if I've got access to a balcony or maybe a deck location that I know about that I'm going to have while I'm traveling. But most of the places that I've been traveling lately, I just don't have the space to be able to set this up, and it just takes up a little bit too much space. Longer wire dipoles can be really unwieldy, especially if you're operating on the HF bands, to be able to get something up effectively in that time and having the space to be able to do that. So, well, that then leads us to vertical antennas. And things that come to mind here are things like the Buddy Stick, the Buddy Stick Pro, the Wolf River Coil. There's a variety of other different ones out there of different, the MPass 2.0 from Chameleon, all great antennas, but all of which require some kind of a counterpoise to make them really work effectively. And when you start talking about stretching wires out, especially on the ground or an elevated wire, if you're at a resort, you're at a location, that really starts becoming a safety hazard. Plus, when you start putting up these larger antennas, you start drawing more attention to yourself, and you want to try and avoid that if you can, to just kind of be a little low key while you're setting up to operate. Then the next would be some sort of a long wire, maybe an end-fed half wave, maybe such as the Chameleon LEFS, or maybe a homebrew antenna or so forth. These, again, very effective, very efficient, but you're going to need some kind of a support. You got these long wires that are set up. It just takes a little more time and a little more effort. If you've got access to a park down the street or in the area, by all means, go ahead and bring something like that, because a lot of those antennas will pack down really small. They're easy to slip into a carry-on. But more than likely, you're probably not going to have both the time and space to set those up. For me, when I've been traveling for business, and I want to bring my ham radio with me to be able to set up and operate for a while, the antenna that's become my really go-to for this has been a magnetic loop antenna. I have the Chameleon F-Loop 2.0. It's a great antenna. It packs down really small. It fits right in the carry-on luggage. Here I'm set up at the resort. I've just found a little kind of shaded spot. It was really tricky to find a shaded spot in Florida. That was a little cool to be able to sit there and operate in. I had my EmComm 705 with me, and that's pretty much all of the gear that I needed to have in order to be able to sit there and operate with a variety of different modes. I have a little small tripod that I have the Chameleon, the F-Loop mounted to, and that allows me to help elevate the thing, get it just off of whatever the table that I'm operating on. And it did a pretty good job while I was there, set up and operate. And there is obviously, there's magnetic loops by several other manufacturers. There's the one by EmComm. It's actually an alpha antenna. It was built for the EmComm 705. That one's really nice and compact, very small, very easy to transport. There's the Alex loops. Those right here, just such wonderful things about them. I'm really looking forward to being able to try one of those in the future. But any of the magnetic loop antennas, you can also, of course, homebrew your own. any of those magnetic loop antennas are very effective. They're very small footprint, and they're not really drawing a huge amount of attention and requiring a kind of a larger setup where you're going to have a lot of gear set up to be able to operate on them. This is what the waterfall display looked like while I was operating last week with the F loop. The 20-meter band was pretty much lit up from one end to the other with signals just absolutely everywhere. They were coming in really nice and strong. I was able to make a good number of contacts while I was sitting there operating for just a little while. And it was a lot of fun to be able to get the radio out, pull up a little antenna, and just spend a little downtime when I wasn't working to be able to get in here and do some operating. Now, one of the nice things about bringing your ham radio with you when you're on a business trip is you're going to have different propagation and different DX opportunities than you typically would have. So I live out here on the West Coast in Southern California. And so by moving my physical location to the East Coast, I was able to get access to many more European stations deeper into the Middle East and other areas. 9 Kilo 2 Kilo Oscar was on the air in Kuwait. They were coming in super strong. They had a massive pileup that was going, but I normally am not able to hear them from the West Coast. It was really interesting to be able to get on and to be able to pick up and have the opportunity to work some stations in other areas. Now, it's not all just about you getting out and setting up and operating for a while. It's a really good idea when you are setting up and operating in a business setting where you can invite some of your colleagues to share ham radio with some of your other folks who may not have been exposed to the hobby. A lot of people get really interested when you invite them out to come on out and spend a little bit of time, check out what this amateur radio hobby is. You can see how we can make some contacts around. And so I was really fortunate. I have a good colleague. I spent pretty much the entire pandemic working with Mr. Jack Hodgson remotely. And so this was the first time in several years that we've been able to get together face to face, spend some time being able to work together, and he did come out and spend some time operating with me out there. Now, Jack is the host. If you are into civil aviation at all, you're probably already familiar with the podcast Uncontrolled Airspace. It's been running for about 15 years. Jack's the host of that. You can find him on jackhodgson.com and on all the socials. Great guy, and absolutely wonderful podcast. If you're even the least bit interested in civil aviation, then you should definitely check out Uncontrolled Airspace and follow Jack on all those socials. But Jack got exposed to amateur radio for the first time by coming out and spending just a little bit of time operating with me. And he's now studying for his amateur radio license and looking forward to being able to get a radio and antenna rig to both bring with him on future trips, but also to now bring with him in his airplane and operate from his home in New Hampshire and other locations. So it's a real boon for the hobby and for colleagues and for your friends to be able to get exposed to amateur radio. So I really encourage you to invite others along. So let's talk a little bit about operating digital while traveling. And the biggest key to success here is to be prepared. Now, what's that going to mean? Well, you're going to need to really have 3 key bits of information when you're doing this. First of all, you need to set on your computer the correct time zone for where you're going, and you need to resynchronize your time. So all 3 of these items are things that you can do once you get to the location you've traveled to. You're at your hotel room, maybe one of the evenings. Plug your computer in, connect it to the hotel wireless, or if you've got a hotspot or something, connect that up. And rechange your time zone. We'll step through where you do that. Sync your audio. The next thing you want to do is make sure that you know what your new grid square is. Make a note of that. We're going to give you a couple of hints for how to do that. And if you're planning on operating on WinLink, especially HF WinLink, then you're going to want to download the propagation tables for your new location. even though you may be used to operating on HF for WinLink on a very regular basis from home, as soon as you change your location to say across the country, propagation is going to be quite different in that area. So more than likely, many of your favorites that you have stored stations are probably not going to work for you. They might work from that location, but you want to definitely download those propagation tables. So let's walk through some of these things. The first of which is making sure you have that time zone set. So you're going to click on the start menu. You're going to go to your control panel, and you're going to go to the time and languages settings page. You're going to go look down until you find the time zone setting, and then change to your current local time zone right there. A little lower down on that page, you'll also find the additional settings section, and there's an option there for sync now. Go ahead and click sync now. Make sure you are connected to the internet when that happens, and that will synchronize your computer and make sure your time is all synced up. And that'll come into play when we start looking at FD8 here in just a few minutes. The next is you're going to want to know what your grid square is. Now, you can do this a couple of ways. First of all, you can go to levineCentral.com/ham/gridsquare.php. You can enter in the top what your city, state, where you're going to be operating from. And it'll do a quick little search, and it'll tell you right there what your grid square is. So you can do this like prior to heading out on your trip in order to make sure that you've got the correct grid square. It's a really easy way to be able to do this. Just look up that information. Another way, the way that I typically do this myself, is I just use an app on my mobile phone. Now, I have an iPhone, and I use an application called HamSquare. You just open up HamSquare. It uses the GPS inside of your mobile phone, and it'll calculate what your grid square is. It'll tell you right there on the screen. If you're using an Android device, there's an app called Grid Square Locator. Just install that. It does the exact same thing. The interface is a little bit different, but it just uses your built-in GPS, calculates what your grid square is, and then pops it right there on the screen for you. You can just go ahead and write that down, and you're good to go. Now, if you are planning on just using WinLink while you're out and about, then you can, of course, have your little portable, your little USB connected GPS. Go ahead and plug that in, and WinLink will just take care of all that for you. So if you normally operate your WinLink station and you have that little USB connected GPS chip, you're all set. Your station is already set up. Just make sure you got your GPS out. It'll reset all of your location information for you, and you're pretty much good to go. We'll put links to all of these in the show notes afterwards in a little while. So let's talk about operating WinLink from an unfamiliar place. So this is a really good test, especially for emergency communicators. You bring your station with you, and even if you're just going to send a simple WinLink message, you really want to step through this process. So let's say you get deployed to another location to be able to go support a group or a state that's outside of your normal area. You really want to know, how do you set up and do all of this stuff? So it's a really good test for being able to make sure as an emergency communicator, you're able to effectively operate. So the first thing you want to do, you've written down your grid square. You want to open up WinLink, and you want to go to the settings menu. So you go to WinLink and go to the settings menu and go to the WinLink Express properties. It's the very first link right there under settings. And there on the left-hand side, about 2/3 of the way down the screen, you'll see a link for My Grid Square. And you just plug in your new grid square right there, and then you click the update button down at the bottom. It's a really simple change. You just go ahead and enter that in, hit update, and then WinLink is pretty much good to go at that point. It knows kind of where you're now located, and you're pretty much ready. The next thing that you want to do, make sure that it's a good idea to have your radio connected, although you don't have to have it connected. You're going to go up to where the open session window is and click the drop down, select the type of session that you're planning on operating. Here, I was going to be operating on VARA HF for WinLink, and just go ahead and click the button that says open session. And WinLink will kind of auto detect at that point that your grid square has changed from what it was, and it will know, hey, I need to update the propagation tables. And it's going to bring up a little pop-up window, and it's going to say, hey, WinLink Express needs to update the propagation estimates for channels. Would you like to do that now? And just say yes. Go ahead and update. Again, you want to do this when you are in your hotel room while you have that access to the internet. It is possible to do this via radio only, but it's a really good idea to go ahead and do this beforehand. Now, notice, even though you might have a GPS chip to be able to operate from another location, let's say you're getting deployed and you know, hey, I'm going to go help for some hurricane evacuation that just took place, and I'm flying to somewhere to go do that. You can use that process that we just stepped through, going to a website, figuring out what the grid square is going to be, where you're going to be located, and before you even hop on the plane, you can update the propagation table. So when you hit the ground, you are already your computer WinLink knows the local stations and the stations that you're likely to be able to reach. So it's a real nice trick to be able to do all of these processes and get some practice doing them as well. So once you get into your WinLink and you've got WinLink set up and everything kind of ready to go, you want to make sure that you go into that WinLink channel selector. Now, this is pretty much the same channel selector that you're going to see regardless of the HF mode that you're going to be operating, whether you're going to be doing PACTOR or VARA or what have you. This is that propagation table that gets updated. So I'm set up to operate with my magnetic loop antenna, and I was operating on 20 meters. So the first thing you want to do is you want to look down that frequency column, and you want to find the HF station or the HF gateway that is on the band that you are tuned to, that you're ready to be able to set up and operate on, that's got the best likelihood of a good quality path to where you are physically located. You can just hop in there and make sure that you've got that one selected. Notice at the time of day that I selected this one, stations on 40 meters and 17 meters and 30 meters are all right here at the top of the list, but my antenna was tuned up for 20 meters, and this was an international station that it was that had the best propagation for me to get to from my location. So it's definitely a thing to be able to go in and check, look and see what's the station that you're most likely to be able to get to. It's a good time to be able to check all of those, make sure you know how to do that. Another tool that's here, and you can see it right here in the top of the menu bar, you can see there's an option for map, and this is again built into all of the WinLink options, and that's the WinLink propagation map. If you haven't seen this, it's a really cool thing. Go ahead and click on that map link that's in that's in the channel selector window, and it will bring up a map, and it'll actually color code all of the gateways for you, and it'll highlight in green the ones that have the best propagation likelihood for you to be able to reach at that particular time. Yellow would be the next ones, red would be down from that, and you're able to then look and see, it's showing you in real time what that propagation is likely to look at, where you're likely to be able to reach out to. Now, this is all fine and dandy, but when you are set up in a portable situation where you're outside of your normal area, you may not know how effective your particular antenna and your particular station are. So you could spend a lot of time like testing which one am I going to try and get to and so forth. Or you can just ask yourself, hey, am I being heard? And a great way to check that is by testing your station by using FT8. Now, with FT8, when you first launch it, you'll want to go into the settings section of your FT8 setup, and you're going to want to change your grid square. It's right there on the general tab. Pretty much the first line that you come to, you just go ahead and enter in that new grid square that you're going to be operating from. And then if your FT8 has already been set up to be able to operate with your radio and your computer, you're pretty much good to go. Otherwise, you're just doing the normal troubleshooting to make sure that you've got your WSJTX set up to be able to operate properly. Then you want to fire up FT8, and you want to let it run for just a few minutes. Just listen, make sure you're getting some decodes, so you can see very quickly, hey, if you're not getting any decodes, do you have the right audio port selected? Is your computer set up correctly? Is the time sync set up correctly? All the normal kind of troubleshooting things that you want to do. You can then either choose to answer a couple of CQs and see if you're able to make some contacts, or simply find an open section of the band and call CQ for just a few minutes. Even if you do this for just a few minutes, it's really going to help you determine, are you being heard? Because then you can just fire up. You can do this right on your mobile phone, or if you're still in access of the hotel Wi-Fi, you can use the hotel Wi-Fi as well. And you can bring up pskreporter.info or pskreporter.info. There's a link there for the map on PSK Reporter. Go ahead and click on that, and you enter in your call sign at the top of the window. And what it's going to do is it's going to show you all of the stations that you are hearing. They're going to have that larger bubble, and it's going to have the time frame for when you were hearing that station. And then all of the ones that have just a little pin on them are stations that are hearing you. So very quickly, you are able to tell, hey, is my antenna working? Is my station working? How far am I getting out? What's my skip zone right now? Here in this situation, you can see I'm in roughly Orlando, Florida, in this right here, and I have quite a significant skip zone here. It was all the way up into the Carolinas and west to about Louisiana or so, all in that kind of radius right there. I was not being heard or hearing any other stations on 20 meters, but right outside of that zone, I was being heard very well. And so when I was set up there, I knew that there was a WinLink gateway that was on 20 meters. It was in Pennsylvania, and I was able to connect directly to that gateway. First try, made the connection, and was able to pass some digital traffic via WinLink while I'm sitting there at the resort. It was a really, really fun thing to do. And that's more than anything, take the time to simply have some fun. Bring your gear with you. Bring a small subset of the gear. You don't need to bring a lot of stuff. Have just what you need to operate. It's always a really good idea just before you head out. Make sure you set up your complete station at home. Make sure everything you've got all of the little adapters, the wires, and so forth, and then break that station down and put it right into your carry-on luggage and carry it with you, so you're able to have a successful time operating while you're out on your next business trip or your next pleasure trip, where you get just a little bit of time that you can break away from the rest of whatever else is going on, set up your radio, and do some operating. So with that, I'm going to bring myself actually back up to screen. I'll come back up to full screen. Dan, you've got a portable setup there. Let's go ahead and bring you up, and you want to show what you've got for a portable station for traveling?
All right. My situation is very different than Chris because I'm retired, and so I don't do business travel, and frankly, I don't travel. Since I've been a ham in 12 years, I've made a few trips to San Diego and Baker to Vegas. So when Chris talked about this topic, I thought, well, I'm not going to be able to contribute much, but Chris suggested that I take the equipment that I have and see what I could come up with that would be compatible with travel in a kind of a carry-on bag situation. So what I did, let's get this camera right here. So this is really something that I sort of made on the run here, but I had this case when I bought my Zygu 6100. Somebody had suggested this case for it, and I bought it, and it worked out real well. But I thought for EmComm use, which is my focus, something else would work better. But I had it, so it's like, hey, let's see what I can come up with. So I got this case. I found a quick reference guide that was available online for my radio, which is kind of critical. I had this battery, which had been recommended on a couple of different YouTube. It claims to be 20,000 milliamp hours, which works out to 20 amp hours. It's a lot of power for this small battery. But the key thing was, it has a variety of inputs, but the key one is it has USB-C, and more importantly, it's USB-C power delivery, which means that this will deliver both 5 volts like normal USB, but also 12 volts. So it really lends itself, and the size is just awesome. So I got that. I did get a microphone in the case. This radio does have a built-in microphone, so I didn't necessarily have to have that, but I got my radio in there, and then I got the basic accessories. The speaker in the Zygu is pretty crappy, so I had found this small speaker that plugs right into the 3.5 millimeter jack and has much better sound than the built-in speaker. It's rechargeable. I've got my BNC to PL259 adapter, and then the power adapter to go with the USB-C. The thing that really threw me, though, was antennas. As Chris said, wire antenna may be great for EmComm, but it may not be the best thing for portable use. So I thought about what I have, which is really not much that helps. I did build that Wolf River coil knockoff, but it's pretty big, and the telescopic mast that goes with it is even bigger. And so I decided I need to do something different. So I'm going to look at coming up with a different kind of a coil that that may not be particularly useful or ideal for EmComm use, but is more travel friendly. I spent a little bit of time this morning looking for smaller telescopic masts that would pack up easier. The one I have for my Wolf River coil is, I think, 20 inches or more, and isn't going to be very packable. So got me thinking, and I'll make that a point to work on that. But you know, I've got the Zygu. It's a 10-watt radio that packs up nice and small, and I crammed a lot of stuff in this case, which makes it very portable. So that's my my thinking on this, and just based on what I had at home.
Cool. Thanks a lot. Hey, let's go over to David W0DHG for any type of travel tips that you would have for us.
Yeah, absolutely. So, you know, I don't bring HF radios when I travel a lot. Mostly it's HTs. And, you know, the biggest tip that I think I found in the traveling with my HTs is I tend to get the BNC connectors for the antennas so that I don't have a whole big long thing in my bag. I don't want to break them off. I always bring an extra battery and a charger. The couple of times I have traveled with HF gear, more for pleasure than for business. You know, as Chris said, batteries all important. You can only bring up to a certain size. The radio that I travel with when I do travel with an HF rig is actually a 100-watt mobile, and you just have to be thoughtful and think about the power consumption, as mentioned before. I'm not going to run it at 100 watts unless I only think I'm going to run it for a short amount of time. I'm going to dial it back a little bit such that I can get the best usage out of the power, and I'll bring a charger so that I can charge it if I need to. Otherwise, make sure you bring your license just in case anybody asks. You want to have that available anytime. Pretty much any time you're operating your amateur radio, you want to be able to produce a license just in case somebody asks. And that's really it for me.
Excellent. Hey, thanks a lot, David. let's do a quick, let me bring myself back up.
Well, there was one more thing, Chris.
Oh, yeah, sure. Go ahead.
When we covered linear inches in the slides, it was length. You had length times width times height. It's actually length plus width plus height. So
thank you.
Let's clarify for sure, because otherwise you're going to end up with a really teeny tiny little back.
Really teeny little pack. Right. Yeah. Sorry. That was length plus width plus height. There you go.
It's all good.
That's the linear inches. Right. Okay. So with that, let me jump back over here. And if you have not had a chance to send in your WinLink check-in, go ahead and do so now, because we're going to bring it up on the map and see what we've got here. So I'm going to switch over to the map. I'll bring up myself down into the lower left-hand corner. And I'll go ahead and do one more quick check here to make sure that we've gotten everybody. So I'll open up the session and do start. I have been checking along the way to make sure. Look, there's another one coming in. And so we'll go ahead and download that, and then we will do it one more time. If you find the information that we're putting out here on WaveTalkers helpful, then be sure to go onto our YouTube channel, like the video, and give us a subscribe if you haven't done so already. It really helps get the channel out there, and leave us a comment down in the comment section, because that really also helps the algorithm kind of move us along here a little bit. So here we are. We've done our check there, and I'm going to go ahead and close that. Now up here in the top, you normally see us do this. We'll go ahead and click on the little globe icon so we can bring up the map. And here's that select from. You're going to click the drop down menu on that. Now normally we've been doing the WinLink check-in form. That's the old form. We're not going to do that one anymore. The new form, if you are receiving all of these check-in forms yourself, maybe your group is using the WinLink check-in forms, you're going to be looking for the WinLink check-in V5. I really love this. They've added the version number onto the form so we can better identify what's the current form. So the current one right now, as of today's recording, is V5. So I'll go ahead and select that and display the map. We'll blow that out to full screen. We'll start off. Let me zoom out. We'll get a global view here. See if we've got any stations coming in. It looks like we do have Terry down here in New Zealand, ZL1HOG checking in from New Zealand. Good to see you. I know I saw a bunch of check-ins coming in from Roland here in Germany. So Roland, check and make sure you've got that new WinLink form updated. I'm going to zoom in a little bit, click on the right click button and drag in order to pan that zoom over here. And we'll just do a quick roll through of many of these. There's Victor Echo 3 Yankee X-Ray joining us from Canada. And we'll just start rolling over many of these stations here from Wisconsin and Michigan and Southern Ohio, down here in looks like Tennessee, and across the South, many stations that are joining us down here. Looks like there's Rory. Hey, how's it going? Good to see you. Looks like we've got Lloyd there, and a few more stations here. We got John down here near Houston. It's probably King. Yep, King right there in central Texas. We'll come up here to Idaho. Looks like Dave N7RGS. Hey, good to see you. K7QCK. We've got several more up here. We'll roll over a few more. There's Bill up there in Seattle area. Let me go ahead and zoom in a little bit on Southern California, and we can get in the southern United States. Lots of folks under ridiculous heat this week. So I hope everyone is staying cool out there. Quite a few of you joining us. There we go. And up here in the Piedmont area, up near Sacramento. Thanks a lot for joining us up there. Come on down here, KN6 LOA. Now we'll go zoom in just a little further into Southern California. That's up in Ridgecrest. Great to see you there. Looks like we've got Logan here, and quite a few more stations joining us. There's Craig, KJ6IJJ, and Midge joining us. Great. Thanks a lot for joining us. Hey, if you really do find the information helpful that we're putting out, be sure to go on to wavetalkers.com. Click on that buy us a coffee link. Really helps support what we're doing. Next week, we're going to take another bye week. We're not going to be here next week for next Sunday. I'm having to do some more traveling. for work. Work is definitely starting to pick up here finally, and I will be on the road again, but we will be back the following week, and the week after that, we've got a very special show for you. We're going to be coming to you live from the new Buddy Pole headquarters. We're going to be setting up, helping them set up some new WinLink gateway stations there at the new headquarters in Utah. So we're very excited about that coming up. That'll be the first show, the first week in August. Until then, hey, Dan, you got any closing thoughts for us as we wrap this one up?
Just one thing on the new WinLink check-in form. If you have previously set up a favorite for that form, it's really easy to update that. If you just go to the message drop down, go to set favorite templates, and where you have your check-in form, if you just go to the link where it says check space in, if you replace that space with a hyphen, that will update your favorite link so it will work with the new form. So in other words, where it's check space in, just make it check hyphen
the other
in.
side, yeah. On the other side, there you go.
Oh yeah, right over there. There we go. Check hyphen in. There we go. WinLink check hyphen in.txt. You can also hit the browse button, browse and find that new form if you're at all worried about that being the right one. But there you go. Hey, thanks a lot, Dan.
And one other thing, Chris, I think it was last week, and I'm not sure if you were here at the time, but Greg told us about the change log for the new forms. If you create a new message,
you want to just share your screen and show it real quick?
Yeah, let's see here. We run into that same problem where not my whole screen shows though. Can you see my WinLink?
Let me see.
Oh, just you.
Just used to. Oh, there you go. There
okay,
you go.
so if you go message, new message, and then in select template, if you go to standards at the bottom where it says changelog.txt, that is a running up accounting of all the changes in the form packs. So you can go back and look and see what changed in each group of new forms, which might be kind of interesting.
Oh, that's a great tip. That's a great tip.
So another one, good one from Greg. So, okay, that's it.
Cool. David, W0DHG, what kind of closing thoughts do you have for us today?
Yeah, I would say, as I always say, I would encourage you all to, when you travel, bring your amateur radio and get it out and use it in the field and test it in different areas. But as I always say, before you go, set it up and test it. Make sure you've got everything you need, because you don't want to get out there and be sitting by the pool at, some happy place and want to operate and figure out that you missed, one connector, one cable, one, widget that you need to go from one device to the other. So make sure you test it. Make sure you've got all the bits and pieces and maybe a couple extra ones just in case. Yeah.
When I made up that kit real quick this morning, I almost forgot the BNC to PL259, and I would have been screwed because my antennas all use the UHF connector.
I'd like to add though that keep in mind as we talked about the antennas to bring and the setup to bring, that's just one idea of being able to do that. There's obviously lots of different antennas you can bring. you can figure out different ways to set up and operate. The more planning you do before going on your next trip, maybe you find out that just down the street from you there's a local park that's a POTA activation. You can go and activate a POTA, and you can have a little more flexibility as to the type of antenna that you can set up. You might want to consider trying to do some alternative antennas. I know our good friend Ben, AI6YR, he's very fond of taking a length of wire and wrapping it around, say, a flagpole or a light pole or something, and using that as an antenna to transmit on, using your antenna tuner to help tune that up, or tune up a chain link fence, or maybe that lounge chair that's sitting next to you to be able to try and use that to transmit. Any of those sorts of things can be some interesting things to be able to try. But it's a good idea to be able to just be a little discreet when you're doing it, especially if you're on a resort. Definitely don't want to draw too much attention to yourself, where you might get into a situation where security is going to come by and say, hey, you can't do that, whatever that is. I don't know what that is, but it's probably not something that you'd be doing. So have fun, get out there, and we'll see everyone in about 2 weeks for the last show of July, and then we will be into August. So if you're here inside of the Zoom, hang around, we'll do the after party. And if you would like to join us anytime for the after party, just go on to wavetalkers.com, scroll down to the bottom of any page, click the join us link, sign up for our email list. We only send out one message every single week that gives you the link to the Zoom and other information that would be relevant. So with that, we'll say 7-3 to everyone, and we will see you next time.
Have a good week.